Right, Joe. This poem is about a man who was a quiz master. No, he wasn't a quiz master, he was the captain of his quiz team. And he gets older and then realises he's not on top of the world anymore. So, Top of the Form was a radio show that was aired in the 60s and then later brought to TV. That was held quizzes.
Okay, so the captain of the 1964 Top of the Form team focuses on the speaker of the poem, who we come to realise was the captain of the 1964 Top of the Form team. They're the most important person there. Top of the Form was a radio quiz programme, kind of like University Challenge, but aimed at kind of comp age pupils. They start off straight away by putting you in the time period. You know that it's 1964 and there's a degree of specificity in giving you that time, but also you have this idea of people setting the time up by when the music came out. So in the first line, do a diddy diddy, baby love and oh pretty woman, straight away they're telling you they're in the top of the 10 that month. There's a very specific time in this person's life, and they're setting it up by thinking about music, just as, especially older people, tend to think about what they remember as being in the charts at that time. This person clearly has really good general knowledge, and they back that up straight away. Aside from telling you the Beatles are everywhere else, because of course they're trying to tell you that it's the 60s. I can give you the B-side of the Supremes one. Hang on, come see about me. I lived in a kind of fizzing hope. So straight away, by telling you they can give you the B-side, they're telling you that they're able to give you a piece of knowledge that you wouldn't usually expect a person to have. It's a little bit more esoteric to give someone the B-side of an album, or the flip side, the other side. Again, talking about the B-side recalls this idea of having an album, like a vinyl record, rather than having just it on Spotify. Hang on makes it seem almost like you're badgering this person for this information. They've offered it to you straight away though, which suggests that maybe they're quite proud of their knowledge. Come see about me is the title that they're trying to give you. I lived in a kind of fizzing hope. You have this kind of onomatopoeia of fizzing hope here. On the one hand, this seems really optimistic, fizzing hope. It's this idea that everything will be okay. But quite correctly, lived is in the past tense, and as Connor said, it gives you this idea that the bubbles burst literally in their fizzing hope. This is linked also to this idea of gurgling. Again, you've got that onomatopoeia, but it's this idea that they're gurgling with vimto, that there's lack of inhibition, they're almost a little bit brash. It goes on, the clever smell of my satchel. Well, the cleverness is related to their feelings about their past self. The idea that their satchel made them feel clever, so then they are clever. Convent girls. Now this is relating to the kind of emergent sexuality, but also the lack of fulfillment that the person in this poem is getting. We can sort of imply that they're probably male. And the idea that they're going after convent girls, yes, they're very beautiful convent girls, they're very unlikely to fulfill the emergent sexual desires of the person who's going after them. And we see that come out in the last two lines of this stanza. I pulled my hair forward with a steel comb that I blew like Mick. Obviously the Mick they're referring to is Jagger. I pulled my hair forward with a steel comb. It's this idea that they're trying to make themselves look a different way, but also that they feel that they're very cool. My lips numb as a 2-hour snog. You've got this idea that partly they've got the 2-hour snog, which again links to that lack of fulfillment, but also the demotic argot is coming out, which is literally right here. And this is this idea that they're going into the kind of slang, kind of everyman, everyday kind of language that's not very poetic, it's not very lovely. This idea of snog is a little bit kind of horrible and disgusting, but the sound of this comes into the second stanza here. Snog links to snag in no snags. And no snags, aside from calling back to that idea of snog, it links to this idea, no snags, that it contrasts their later life, because their later life is full of snags. They've got their stale wife and their thick kids, but here, no snags. This whole stanza could arguably be a rehearsal for their performance later on. The Nile rises in April, blue and white. The hummingbird's song is made by its wings, which beat so fast they blur in flight. So, first of all, you've got this present tense, rises, is, beat. It seems like it's happening now. And it's almost like he's being caught up in the memories, so it feels like it's happening now. If you look at this as well, you've got just these random facts being thrown out. The Nile rises in April, blue and white. The hummingbird's song is made by its wings, which beat so fast they blur in flight. None of these things relate to anything. None of these things are important, but they're the kind of information he might have needed to know for a quiz broadcast. and this has therefore become the kind of information that he values. When you have here this rhyme, the Nile rises in April, blue and white, the hummingbird's song is made by its wings which beat so fast that they blur in flight. It sounds almost like the line should end there when you get to that point where you have the caesura, when it breaks. But it carries on, and when it carries on in the past tense. It's almost like this person's feelings about themselves are breaking down at that caesura. I knew the capitals, but it's past tense. They knew them. They don't know them now. I knew the capitals, the kings and queens, the dates. It's this idea that this is kind of irrelevant knowledge, but they knew all of it. In class, the white sleeve of my shirt saluted again and again. Sir, correct. So you have this idea that they keep putting their hand up. They're a bit of a spot. They're always going for the answers to the questions. But they are always correct. It's almost inevitable, this idea that every time they put their hand up, they're going to get that answer correct. Later, I whooped at the side of my bike, a cowboy, mounted it in one running jump. So it's this idea that they're still very young. They feel like they're on top of the world. They feel like they're a cowboy. They feel like they're very cool, but they're still a child at this point. I sped down Dyke Hill, no hands, famous, learning, dominus, domine, dominum. So you have this idea that this person, they have a lack of foresight and safety. If you look at no hands, it's this idea that they don't think carefully about how they should feel. And also, I sped down Dyke Hill is this idea that they're literally speeding downhill. They might feel like they're on top of the world, but they're on their way down. There's this link between famous and learning here. That they feel like they're famous and they feel like that's a result of their learning. Later on, you then have dominus, domine, dominum. Literally, dominus is the Latin word, it means master. This person feels like they are the master, like they are in charge of everything in their life. But also, dominus, domine, dominum is declining. In Latin, they have declensions. Here it's declining the noun dominus. It's just like his life is declining. It's going downhill. And this is the transition. It's almost a little bit humorous, but there's a lack of differentiation between his knowledge there and his knowledge in the next stanza, Dave D. Dozy. So he starts off, Dave D. Dozy, try me, come on. My mother kept my mascot Gonk on the TV set for a year. So you have the idea that he moves from talking about Latin nouns, which are quite kind of clever and flashy, and might make you think that the character's quite clever, to talking about random members of a kind of silly 60s band. He comes up with try me. Again, this kind of imperative suggests that he feels that he can order the reader around. He maybe feels like he has control that he doesn't have, but also suggests that he's almost inviting you for a fight, a bit of an intellectual fight with him. The idea, my mother kept my mascot Gonk on the TV set for a year. Again, the Gonk is kind of like a troll doll. It sets it again in the 60s. This idea that maybe their mother was very proud of them and kept their mascot going because they wanted to wish them luck. Then, and the photograph. The idea that it brings in the sentence with the and makes it suggest, and the fact that it's called the photograph, so you've got that definite article there, suggests almost that you should already know about this photograph. You've already seen it. Which again makes it feel like this person thinks more of their own importance than they really have. I look so brainy you'd think I'd just done a bath. The blazer, the badge, the tie. You've got these emblems, the blazer, the badge, the tie, the idea of his past smartness. They're almost emblematic of his past smartness. But it links in then, because you've got that anaphora, the blazer, the badge, the tie, the first chord of a hard day's night loud in my head. He moves into talking about things that are normal teenage things to expect during that time. The idea of liking a really popular song, and A Hard Day's Night was released in 1964, so it links in perfectly with captain the 1964 top of the form team. I ran to the spinny in my prize shoes up Churchill Way, up Nelson Drive. Again, you've got these huge figures, Churchill Way, Nelson Drive, these people who are huge, amazing historical figures who maybe had quite big disappointments at later points of their lives. Over pink pavements that girls chalked on. So you've got the idea of pink pavements for the girls, and then blue evening, and I stamped out the paw prints of badgers and skunks in the mud, my country. The evening is a blue evening, it's not a pink evening, it's a boys' evening, and there's this kind of crude, stereotypical girls/boys mentality there, splitting the gender roles. So you've got the blue evening, you've got the badgers and the skunks kind of go with this idea more of the boys, and the girls get their pink pavements. You also have this idea of it's kind of a carefree summer night when they were younger, and they see it as this amazing thing. And then very, 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 very at the end, my country. It's got this idea of ownership and belonging. Now we're going to see this phrase come up again in a little minute. In the final stanza, the narrator actually tells us starkly how they're feeling. I want it back. The captain, the one with all the answers. Bzz. They're telling us exactly what they want back. They want to be the person that they were when they were younger, but they're speaking about themselves almost in the third person, and it's as though they don't feel connected in that identity anymore. They want that identity back though. They don't feel connected to the identity they have now either. My name was in red on Lucille Green's jotter. This idea that they were liked by a girl called Lucille Green when they were a kid, and they liked that attention. They liked being the superstar that everybody liked. I smiled as wide as a child who went missing on the way home from school, and this is where this poem takes a really dark turn. Because when they're talking about smiling as wide as a child who went missing on the way home from school, they're talking about things like the pictures of children, missing children on milk bottles, and how they are always smiling pictures. Because of course they are. Parents don't take pictures of their children when they're sad. But it's this idea of the invasion of the childhood world by the adult that's going to come back and back all the way through Meantime, but especially you'll see that in Stafford Afternoons. The Keenie is just meaning the boffin, the clever one, but it's said with a bit of pride here. I say to my stale wife, 6 hits by Dusty Springfield. So straight away, the narrator of this poem, they're saying to their wife that who they think is stale, they think she's out of date or too old or boring, asking her for 6 hits by Dusty Springfield. And they're not really asking, there's no question mark, they're demanding that she give them the answer. They're measuring everyone else around them by their own ability. Now, after that, I say to my boss, a pint. Demanding from their boss, because again, they feel like they're the master. Remember Dominus, Domine, Dominum. They feel like they're the master of their own life here, and therefore they can tell anybody to behave in any way that they want to. How can we know the dancer from the dance? Now, that's a quotation from W.B. Yeats' poem Among School Children, but what they're really asking is, how can we know the sign from the signified? How can you separate a word from its meaning? And here, how can you separate a person's identity from the things that the person does? Nobody. Now, the idea is that nobody can answer that question. So in some ways, nobody is the answer to the question. But nobody is also because nobody will give him the answer to the question. And nobody is by itself in a sentence by itself, because so is the narrator. They're by themselves. They literally have nobody. Finally, my thick kids wince. Calling their kids thick, obviously they're measuring their kids by their own intelligence. It's not very polite, it's quite brusque again. This idea that this person feels as though they can speak about people in any way that they want to, but also that the children wince because the children don't like the parent just as much as the parent doesn't like the children. Name the Prime Minister of Rhodesia. Well, Rhodesia doesn't exist anymore, it's Zimbabwe. At the time it was Ian Smith, but it doesn't exist anymore. And the idea is that this knowledge that this person has is no longer relevant. It's silly, it's gone, it's rubbish. Now, by saying that it's my country directly in the line afterwards, they're claiming something which is gone. The country of their memory, the way that they were when they were younger, that's disappeared. Just like the country of Rhodesia is gone. It's no longer. And then finally, they're asking a question. How many florins in a pound? This time it's asked. It's almost like they're not quite sure of themselves. They don't know where to go at the end of this poem. Now, I'd link this poem to the idea of childhood or memory or time, if you're looking at it in terms of Meantime. I'd also make sure that you make the point that it is the first poem in Meantime. It starts off the collection. Being able to talk about the position of the poem will really, really help you when you're coming to talk about the structure on your second question. And knowing that this is the point where it starts off, that you've got this disappointing childhood depicted, this idea that maybe life doesn't work out how you expected it to, and the idea that maybe happy memories and nostalgic memories are not so happy after all is something that's going to come back and back throughout this collection.